today, what I want to spend some time on is talking about teams in Bluehill Central. And so this session, primarily, we're going to be spending it in the application, starting from a fresh database as if you're just getting started with Central, creating that first team, talking about some considerations that are worth thinking about in that process. But before we jump into the application, I just want to set the kind of foundation, make sure we're all on the same page as to what I'm referring to when I'm talking about a team, and just some basic information about how teams can be useful for your testing. And as we go along, if things pop into your head, please just shoot a question over through Zoom, and we'll get to those at the end. All right, so let's jump in. So just to lay the groundwork, what is a team? Bluehill Central organizes groups of users into teams. So as you can see on the right-hand side, a kind of a screenshot from the login page of Bluehill Universal, that users log into a team when they open up Universal to run some tests and modify methods, or if they're logging into Central to change a user's permission, add a user to a team, change team settings, access and download files, that whether you're at the test system or at your desk in one of these applications, that you're going to be prompted to say, hey, not only what's your username, what's your password, but what team are you logging into? And you can see in this example that there's a list of 4 teams to choose from, but that's not always going to be the case. That kind of many labs where they have the ability to share files and settings across all users or any connected systems, that there's no need to have multiple teams. It's just easiest to have a single team. But in the cases where you need to create silos between different groups of people that are using your machines, the Instrons, then that's where it's going to be useful to actually create multiple teams to support those multiple workflows. And we'll get into that. So if you do have multiple teams, you can add any given user to any team. So one user can be a member of multiple teams. However, the permissions that apply to them and the files that they have access to when they log in are going to be specific to that team that they've logged into. So last couple points here is that when you are managing your files, your Instron files on the Bluehill Central database in that file system controlled on the database, that each team is going to have their own independent file system. And similarly, that if you are using Bluehill Central and have our compliance package, so our what we call traceability, that traceability allows you to configure approval, electronic signatures of changes that are occurring to files and results that are being generated, and also creates an audit trail of all of the system's activity. But if you do have traceability, that each team is going to have their own approval requirements that can be configured. So different functional groups within your lab might be more restricted than others. They might share one Bluehill Central database, but each team might have a slightly different set of requirements that drive different necessary workflows for the policies that kind of dictate the usage in those different environments. So maybe some of those things made you think of how this could be helpful, but let's explicitly list out a few different ways that teams are useful kind of in the grand scheme of your testing process. So the first thing is that you can have simple, secure organization of your test methods and results. So only members that you designate or only users that you designate that are members of the team are the people that can access or modify any of the files that are saved to your team's file system. And each revision, as say a test method changes, that we're not overwriting that file, that all of the revisions are going to be stored on the database, protected, and backed up. And so that's kind of different from using and relying on Windows, where you're saving all of your files on the local Windows file system, and you have to be very aware of the protections and the access to those files, that there can be, you're not necessarily sure who can open up those folders, who can accidentally move things around, remove things, because it's simply whoever has access to that Windows file system. So by using Teams on Central, you can really lock down and simplify the access and security of your Instron files. The second is user management, so that you can control who has access to the machines and what their permissions are. And you can do that all from one place. So if you have new employees coming into the lab, or if you need to modify an existing user's security permissions because they have, they used to just be able to run tests. Now you're granting them the permission to be able to modify and create methods. That making that change you can do remotely and in one place by changing the settings within Central, and any connected system will just instantly get those changes. Whereas if you're not using Teams, you're not using Central, then in many cases, you're to do the same type of user management, you're going to walk up in front of system one. You're going to add that new user in system one. You're going to walk up to system two, system three, and duplicate that kind of management activity for each machine. The third benefit is just supporting different requirements. So different approval and security requirements that when you're using Bluehill Central, you might say you have 2 or 3 Instron machines that are being managed by Central. That one of those systems might be dedicated to a production or QC setting where the approval and security around who can change methods, around the approval process of when a change is made, is very different from maybe system 2 and 3 that are used in a development setting where the users are generally unrestricted. There's no sign off necessary to create a method and run a quick test to do a one-shot kind of test on something they're working on. That those different flows about the necessary approvals and electronic signatures to approve a change might be very different. And so to support those different cases, that is where we use Teams. And another benefit that is specific to the traceability package, our compliance users, is that when you do have reviews, so kind of approvals of changes, that when you log into a team, you only see the reviews that are relevant to your team. You're not going to be kind of sifting through a large queue of things from potentially other users and other groups. That'll just show you kind of the stuff that's relevant to you. And same for the audit trail. You're not going to see all of the activity on all of the systems. You're going to see the activity that's relevant to users that are logging in to your team. So that is kind of, I wanted to lay the foundation there. I hope that was useful. But what I want to do now is jump into the application. So let me close out of PowerPoint and open up Bluehill Central. Okay, so you guys should be seeing Bluehill Central. You can see that in the top left. I'm running version 1.27 right now, the current shipping version. And what we're looking at here is kind of the first screen that you would run into once Bluehill Central, its database has been configured. Our service team has kind of coordinated with your IT group to make sure we have the SQL database identified. We get it up and running, connected, and once that back end is set up, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create your first team. And so that's what I want to do right now is show you that wizard that you'll go through and talk about some of the decisions you have to make. And yeah, so just if you have any questions along the way, again, feel free to ask, but we will get started. So no teams found. Let's create that first team. So what you can see is, let me just move the Zoom window, that we're in this wizard. So we're going to do some initialization, security, then do some settings for traceability, trend tracker, and then a final review. And so depending on what you've purchased and how you intend to use Central, that you may or may not need to do some of these steps. But I'll show each of them just for the sake of completeness. So it's going to ask you for a team name. So for this first team, I'm going to create a development team. I'll call them my dev team. And it's going to ask, what type of security do you want to use? So the two different types of security are Bluehill Security and Active Directory. Bluehill Security is going to create users kind of in the environment, in the Bluehill environment, whereas Active Directory is going to reach out to your domain, and you're going to be logging in with Windows credentials throughout the usage of the software. So for this purpose, I will be using Bluehill Security. Certainly, if you're using Active Directory, our installation team that walks you through that will send and kind of advise you on different ways of making sure that the user groups that Active Directory employs are in a good place, and you've thought that through so that when you come down to setting permissions of who can run a test, who can modify a method, who's a reviewer, that you have the correct kind of associated user groups to make setting up those permissions nice and easy. But we will see what it looks like when you set up users using the Bluehill security model. And I'm going to keep traceability and trend tracker active. So the first screen is going to be asking about different things for security. So do you want to set up an expiration interval? Sure, every 180 days, let's force the user to change their password. There's an inactivity lock to require login if the application is dormant. Let's do 10 minutes. And now it's going to ask, who is my team administrator? So the first user that is going to become a member of this team is going to be an admin. And so I'm going to make myself an admin. You can have more than one admin. This is not the sole admin, but the first user that is going to be created is an admin user. I'll add some basic information. If this is not actually you, then you can kind of create an account, save the password, and indicate that when this person logs in, that their password can be, they'll be prompted to set it on the next login. But this is me. So I'm going to proceed. It's going to ask me, what do I want my permissions to be for these different parts of the application? So I am a team admin, managing files in lab management. Do you want to be able to do all of these things? I'm gonna keep all of these as yes. For traceability, do you want to be able to view the audit trail, configure settings, or review files? Again, I'm just going to say yes to everything. And then it's going to say, for the testing software, Bluehill Universal, when you log in there, what type of user are you? And I'm gonna give myself admin access to Universal as well. And I'll press next. And the last step here is, okay, my user has been created. Let's add, you have an option to add more users at this point. And you'll see once you get the team created, you can, of course, create users after the fact, but just to show you what that looks like, I will create a second user, maybe a couple other users. I'll say Oliver is going to be an operator for us. And so I'm just going to omit first, last name, email. No need to do that. But let's say Oliver is going to be setting his own password. Oliver is a restricted user that he won't be able to upload or download files to the database. He can view the audit trail, but can't do any configuration or approval. And in Bluehill Universal, he'll be an operator who is, we're going to say, is limited to testing specimens. So that'll be Oliver. And I will create maybe one more manager. We'll call her Mary. Mary will be a manager that works alongside me in the lab, who will have admin permissions just like me. And she'll be setting her own password as well. And so I will make sure that she's a team admin, because she'll be responsible for doing some configuration of users and things, just like I have the ability to do. She'll have full access within lab management, full access in traceability, and full access in Universal for now. So let's just say those three users are kind of get us in a good position. And let's proceed. So the next piece is traceability. So traceability, you're going to have some decisions. These decisions don't need to be made in this wizard. You can make a change to these signature settings after the fact. But if you do know how you want your team configured, there's nothing stopping you from kind of setting this up now. And so there's two different sections. The top section is about revisions to files and how many signatures are going to be required for each of these file types. So report templates, methods, test samples, and the actual PDF report generated from a sample. You can specify whether or not you want no signatures, one signature, two signatures, or three signatures. And so for a method, if you choose one signature, that means the person who's making that change is going to have to authenticate, and it will apply that electronic signature to that method file. And only methods that have one signature will be allowed to be used to run a test. If you have two signatures, that first signature is again going to be the person who's performing that save and then submitting the file for review. And the secondary signature is going to be a different user who has the permission to perform the review. And so this is where you designate who can perform that review. You can say group A, group B, or group C reviewer is going to be able to sign off. If you did 3 signatures, you can say, okay, which group is going to perform the first, which group is going to perform the second review. You can specify whether or not those reviews have to be sequential or it could be in any order. So up to a couple different options. I'll leave it as 2 signatures, group A, and maybe the PDF report is really what I want the stamp to be applied on. So I can just see some test results and the test curves, and those not only are going to be signed off by the operator, but by someone in a different group, because maybe the people that approve method changes are more in development engineering roles who are controlling those methods, whereas the data that's being produced, that they would be maybe a different group, maybe someone in quality assurance to make sure that the product is performing. So you could set up things like this. There's also an option to require a comment. So there's a comment field when you're performing a signature that can be optional. So in this case, I'll say it's optional. And the lower section is signatures specific to different kind of manipulations of files on the file system. So if you are to upload files into the database, you can say, do you want someone to sign off on that? Or is it okay for the users that have permission to do that? They can just do it. They don't need to authenticate. It's going to be tracked. They don't need to authenticate. Same thing with removing files. Do you want someone to actually sign off on that? Or do you want to just rely on the permissions that allow users, yes, they have the right to remove it. They can remove it. We don't need an additional sign off if we've been given them that permission. And again, do you need to have a comment? Yes or no? And so as I kind of gone through those examples, I've realized that I'm actually creating a development team. And so these settings around kind of locking down methods, locking down test data with signatures, I probably wouldn't do that. So for the development, for the development team that I've started with, it's going to be unrestricted. There's not going to be a need to perform sign-offs. But a second team, if we were to create that, maybe that production environment, maybe they would be the team who had different signature policies or requirements, if traceability is used. If you don't have traceability, you're not going to make these decisions. So let's go to the next screen. Next screen is Trend Tracker. So if you have Trend Tracker, it's going to ask you to just set up a connection. And I will, again, this is something that our IT is going to help set up on the back end to make sure you have that database identified and that you have the details associated to what I'm filling out right here. And so this is essentially just establishing that connection so that when you actually are running tests, that your methods can export to the correct database for you to start analyzing trends on Trend Tracker. So this first connection that you create is going to establish that default for the system. And finally, we're at the review. So the last part of the wizard is going to be a long list of everything that all the settings that you've just changed or created. And so each kind of has their own section, from the team identification, security settings, your traceability settings, your trend tracker settings, and the users you created. That all of this stuff is kind of just, you can read through it. It's going to be kind of committed to the audit trail. So if you do have traceability, all of those initial settings are going to be sent to the audit trail, but just a summary for you as you're creating the team. So you can press save, and that's that. You are now kind of ready to go. And that we were brought to Bluehill Central's home screen. You can see that Dan has been logged in on the dev team. If I were to log out, you can see the only team I can select is my dev team. Say Mary wants to log in. She can kind of use that dummy password I had originally created. It says it's expired. Then Mary can set her own. Let's make sure I remember this. Set her own password. And now Mary is logged in. Again, she's an admin just like me. And so I just want to pop into a couple areas here to add on to maybe some things to think about as you're getting started with Central. So the first is that if you need to add new users, change permissions for people on the dev team, then you can go into settings and you can go into security. And this is where you're going to see who your team members are. And you can edit this screen if you are someone who can configure teams, if you have that permission. So Mary does. And so she can remove people, she can create new users, or if there was a different team that had users already created that you can select from, then you could add someone from kind of from that list. So you can add users. If you want to modify someone's permissions, again, you can select who that is. And if you have the ability to configure teams, you're going to have the ability to edit people's permissions. So you can modify people's permissions. That if you're using traceability and you want to change one of those settings associated to signatures, you can, and you have the ability to configure traceability, you're going to see that edit button, and you can make changes to traceability. So another kind of good thing to take note of that hasn't been configured on my system is that if you are using traceability and you want email notifications of kind of where you're at in a review process, that you can enable notifications to be sent out under different conditions. If something's approved, if something's been submitted and it's kind of waiting for your approval, you can set up notifications here. But let's go back to the home screen. What if you want to create your second team? Where do you do that? And so if you kind of are a Bluehill Central admin, that you'll see this purple button in the bottom right, which is System Administration. And this is where it's going to show you kind of all of the active teams on this Bluehill Central database. And so if you want to add a new team, then you can go through that same wizard we just went through to create your second team. If you need to remove a team for any reason, you can remove them from the screen. All of the users, kind of the global users that you've created, if you're using Bluehill Security, can be modified here in terms of their email, phone number, their name, if you need to remove them, so on. So that's where you can do kind of high-level team management and creating new teams. And the last thing I kind of wanted to show is your file system. So in lab management, this red role is where your file system, that's kind of where your files that are getting stored on the database will live. And so this is a fresh team, as we know, that we put in a couple defaults, output, templates. There's nothing in them. It's just folders that we recommend if, hey, how am I going to manage the files that people are going to be accessing on the test system? Maybe you want to have an area where they go for templates. Maybe that you want to have kind of an area where they're saving samples and output data. But if you don't care about these folders, you can throw them away and create your own structure. But I think what's helpful is just to see, okay, maybe from an output standpoint, you can create a couple files. Maybe there's an archive of existing test files that you'll upload into the database. So you can create an upload folder, sorry, an archive folder. And then maybe you want another folder for your current year data, and maybe current projects can be put into this folder. On the template point of view, that kind of basic recommendations is going to be, let's create a method folder and a report template folder. So when you're using Central, I mean, of course, it's going to be helpful to have your methods stored on the database so that any machine that's connected can access that same file, and that you're not using the Windows file system to try to pass around methods. That when you're connected to Central, we'll open up Universal in a second just to show you, but it's good to store your methods there and your the report templates that the methods reference, so that you can share one report template across multiple methods. So maybe you have a folder for your methods and report templates that if you need to get your existing methods into the database, you can do that a couple different ways. So one is by using Bluehill Central and uploading files. So let's see kind of on Zoom, if I press upload, that with the Zoom connection, this might take a little extra moments, but what it's doing, it's just looking at my local file system. Wherever I am viewing Central, it'll look at my local drives, local files, and say, hey, what do you want to upload? But this can take a moment, and it'll ask me, okay, what do you want to add to the database? And so there is a shortcut because I have Universal also installed on my computer, that it's going to show you kind of those files associated to Universal. And I can go into maybe my templates into the method suite that is provided with Universal, and I have the full suite, but maybe I want to add all of the plastics methods because that's what I'm most involved with right now. So I can upload that folder, or if you wanted to upload a specific test method or file, then you certainly could just upload that specific file. But now you can see on my database, if I go back to the top level, in templates, in my methods, that plastics folder was added with each of the plastic standards and kind of their nested file structure of their methods, the test brief that our applications team here at Instron kind of prepares for each of these, listing out exactly what that standard is doing, all the different settings. So this is, of course, accessible in Universal, but if you want to upload it into Central, you can view it here. And so, yeah, so you can upload files, but another way to get files from day one into the database is just doing this from Universal. So you can, at the test system, if you're more comfortable kind of finding those methods that you care about from the machine, then I can show you what that looks like. So if you'd imagine right now, I'm in Bluehill Central, but imagine if I walk over to the test machine and I am looking at Universal, that again, you've created that team, you'll be connected to the central database. So you'll see that dev team that was created. You can log in with the users that have been created. And if you're familiar with Universal, if I want to say access a method and save it to the database, you can go into the method role and open up that method, and wherever it currently lives, and save it to the new location. So in this case, I can say browse. And now that I'm connected to Central, I see my Central files, but you could go back to your original local files and grab a method that you care about, open it up, and save it to the database. But one of the reasons why I wanted to show this is just to kind of make sure that you're considering a couple things. And so not only are we going to save this now to live on the database so that any machine can easily access it, but I want to make sure that when an operator runs a test, that your default folder of where that output is going is going to the right place. And so I don't want all of my output to be going back to Windows when I'm trying to manage things on Central. That you want to make sure that that method is configured to say, okay, let's go to that 2025 or whatever folder you want that method to output to. So you can select a database location, and same thing with the report template. Rather than having a report template that's locally kind of managed on each machine, you want to save a report template to the database, and then you want your methods to refer to that database location for the report. So the way you do that is you'd go into the method that references your report template. You could save it. Rather than living locally, you would say, I want you to live in my report template folder on Central. Let's just call that's my report. Save. And now your report template is going to be referencing kind of that database location. So you can do that with this method. You can do this with other methods that you want to start saving to the database on your new in your new Central environment. And so this is the method itself, that tensile compound XYZ kind of fake method I have. Rather than having it live on this local machine, I want to save this file to Central to be available on any system. And so that is just a couple of considerations of how you can get your methods into the database. The last thing I'll do before we get to questions is just quickly talk about one last consideration of setting up teams and kind of the users that are going to be using Central. And that is who's actually going to install this application? Where are they actually using Bluehill Central? So in this case, I'm Dan. I'm kind of in charge of the lab, and I've installed Central on my own employee laptop to perform kind of to set these things up and to intermittently be able to do user management, to potentially look at trends in Trend Tracker from my desk, look at the audit trail or perform approvals, download files and things. That who else needs to do those types of activities? And so if other people within your group will be managing users or looking at Trend Tracker or having approvals, that it is they're a candidate to install one of the Bluehill Central viewers on their own computer. And so that can be done on any laptop that has connection to the network where the database is being saved. You can also install Bluehill Central viewers at your test system if you want. So you run tests with Bluehill Universal. Maybe it's also helpful to have Bluehill Central installed at the test system if you want to use the application there. But it's not necessary to be at the test system, but the option is yours. So where this viewer is going to be installed, it could be on employees' laptops, it could be at the machine. Maybe there's a shared workstation in the lab that people can log in and out of. Those are kind of your options if you want to be thinking about where you're installing this. And the Bluehill Central license that you've purchased has a number of viewer licenses that can be connected. So it comes with one license. Maybe you can purchase more, you can purchase unlimited. But if you do have a fixed number of licenses allowed, you want to be kind of thinking about where those are going to get installed. Okay. So let's shift over to the Q&A. So I see a couple questions that have been submitted. I'll jump directly to those. So the first question is, are the teams specific to each instrument, or can you create one for a site with multiple instruments connected? So currently, the way Bluehill Central functions is that each machine that's connected to the database, so I'll pretend that I am in Bluehill Universal. I walk up to that machine and I log in, that you will see all of the teams that are available. So it doesn't link a specific system ID to a specific team and only show you that team, that in its current form, that you'll see the ability to log into any team, as long as that machine is connected to that database. So the second part of your question is correct, in that multiple instruments. You have one database, as many teams as you want. Any connected instrument will see each of those teams. Okay, next question says, hi, when I am logged in, can I see the other users who are also logged in at the same time as me? Is there a chat box to communicate? So quick answer is no. That if there are multiple users, say you have a couple different scenarios. So first scenario is you have two machines and you have they're simultaneously running tests, and they're both running tests and logged into this dev team. That those users are not going to know that another system is in use running tests with dev. The only interaction that they would see is that potentially the folder that they're saving output to has files that are being added to it at the same time that they are. But there's no restriction in that you can have multiple users logged into the same team, accessing the same method, running the same tests at the same time. And there's not going to be a kind of an indication of everyone that's actively logged in. And the other use case is if you're not at the machine, but maybe you are in Bluehill Central and you log in, that there can be, again, simultaneous sessions running. And it's basically the latest changes and the latest actions. If you're creating folders or changing user settings, that it's actively refreshing for the current settings that are being sent from any client. But the latest change is going to be kind of what people are interacting with. So I think that answers that question. And I don't see, let me see, I don't see any other questions on the list. One thing I'll add before we wrap up is just one common question that we get is, if the file system So if we look at lab management and we're trying to share files across all the connected machines with this database uh, controlled file system, that do I need to have traceability? Do I need to have the audit trail in order to get the file system? And so the answer to that today, so for the first couple of years of this product's being able to be purchased, the answer is yes, that the only way to access the file system is to purchase traceability. So I think in the future, we know that is going to change. So kind of be on the lookout for announcements from our team just to try to make the general use of lab management and kind of the functions and features in there a little bit more accessible to people outside of really highly regulated kind of pharmaceutical biomedical applications that have the need for audit trails and such. But I think that's just one thing useful to clarify, but also just keep your ear out for changes in that area coming soon. And that's it. So I can pass it off back to Nick. You still there, Nick?
I'm here.
All right.
Thanks, Dan. Excellent presentation as usual. So before I wrap things up, I'm going to mention a few quick notes. If any questions do come in between right now and when we wrap things up, I'll have Dan follow up with you by email. We're also going to be emailing each of you a copy of today's recording. I'd also encourage you to check out our YouTube channel to find previous webinars and other educational and helpful videos. Dan and the applications team here at Instron have done a really excellent job over the years of producing some explainer videos for various features in Bluehill that should be of interest if you're looking to improve some efficiency in your lab. And then lastly, a survey should pop up once this webinar ends. We'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment, let us know what you thought of today's presentation. So with that said, I just want to say thanks again to Dan for presenting today, and really thanks to all of you for attending. Really appreciate you joining us. Take care.